to each one of you, and thank you again for joining me here for our nightly briefing on this crisis that we all are facing. Let me, as we start a new week, again start with the thank yous to those who did return to work today, those critical workers that are taking care of us in the midst of this crisis, those who are driving the trucks, those who are making the food, those who are checking us out of the grocery stores, and of course our first responders and health officials who are making sure that we can meet this challenge head on. Thank you to all of the folks that are helping with essential businesses keep us in a good place in difficult days. I know we've all been adjusting to our new lives at home, all been adjusting to spending a little bit more time together with each other. But I hope you've found some wonderful silver linings of this gift of time with each other, with our loved ones, with those that are most precious to us, and those that we too often don't have an opportunity to be together with. And thank you to members of the Los Angeles City government family, disaster service workers, rec and park staff, those of you who have stepped up and who are continuing to serve the city. I'm so very, very proud of you, and thank you for being lifesavers in this life-threatening moment. And thank you to the people of this great city who are staying at home. Thank you for listening last night. I know I had harsh words, and I'll continue to reinforce with folks that you can be a lifesaver, but your actions can also take a life. Keep those 6 feet or more distances from each other, that physical distancing, even as we reach out to each other for social connection and spiritual connection. And for those who still haven't heeded the call to stay home, who are not physically distancing, who crowded beaches and canyons, we know who you are. And this is serious. Stay home and save lives. That's all of our top priority, and it must be yours as well. Saving lives. So tonight, let me update you on the work that we're doing to do just that, to protect your health, to address your housing needs, and to ensure that city operations continue and support everybody in this critical moment. And as always, I give a shout out to everybody else doing this work too. The County Board of Supervisors, my fellow mayors, my city council and other council members, school boards, and so many representatives at the state and national level that are stepping up and playing together than I've ever seen in a way that really makes me feel that we can be on one team in getting through this crisis together. First, let me start with health. As I said last night, ramping up our testing capacity locally and nationally is absolutely critical to our ability to fight and track this virus and ultimately to defeat it. We will continue fighting tooth and nail to bring more testing kits and resources to Los Angeles, working with the county, state, and federal governments, with our private sector healthcare partners, with universities and public labs, with anybody who can help. But we're not sitting still. Yesterday, you heard me talk about the online portal that we launched, where people at the highest risk can find information about 4 new testing locations run by our city. So far, the first day, we saw great progress. The website is up and running. It didn't crash. It's functioning as planned. And about 780 people, probably more by the time I'm speaking now, signed up and got tested today. On top of that, we've tested more than 325 of our leaders on the front lines, first responders, critical city workers, healthcare professionals, those working with the homeless and others. And we're going to keep expanding that testing capacity till we have that capacity to test even more and more people every single day. And I want to thank our county supervisors, I want to thank Councilmember David Rue, and others who are working on this puzzle together. We really are on one team, and we're going to open up that aperture to as many different folks for testing as possible in the days ahead. If you feel that you might meet the criteria for a test for COVID-19 today, please go to coronavirus.lacity.org. For another day, this is just for the zip codes in the city of LA, but we hope by the end of the week to be able to open that up to folks throughout the county as well, and we're working closely with our County Board of Supervisors and other cities to accomplish just that. These tests, again, are for the most vulnerable Angelinos, those with symptoms who are 65 and older, have underlying health conditions, or both. And no matter what, we will have the ability to continue testing our frontline workers. We know we are going to depend more than ever on our doctors, our nurses, our medical assistants, and others who keep our hospitals, our clinics, and our healthcare infrastructure going. So we want to ensure they can continue doing their essential jobs, as well as those firefighters, police officers who are on the front line. There's nothing more vital than preventing the spread of this virus, keeping people healthy and saving lives. That's what we're focused on, and that's what these tests will provide. Second, let me bring you up to speed on what we're doing to keep everyone housed. As small businesses face an uncertain future, and many workers grapple with under or unemployment, I'm committed to making sure that nobody loses their homes during this crisis, during this period as a result of the coronavirus. That's why today I'm enacting an emergency order prohibiting the removal of any residential rental units from the rental market under the Ellis Act, and imposing a moratorium on Ellis Act-related evictions in the city through this crisis. This action closes a gap in the eviction moratorium that we had put forward earlier and clarifies that this special class of evictions is also prohibited. This step is necessary to protect additional tenants from being displaced from their homes at the exact same moment we're asking them to stay at home. And as a reminder, if you cannot pay rent as the direct result of this emergency, you cannot be evicted. And this applies to both residential and commercial tenants. But I want to be clear, the money you owe won't disappear. After this emergency ends, you will have 6 months to pay it back. And it's important to remember that everyone is struggling right now. Not all property owners are large companies, and many get by on the month-to-month checks that they collect. So if you can pay your rent, you should. I also spoke last week about our efforts to house unhoused Angelinos. And I won't mince words, this virus will hit our homeless community hard. It's not a question of if, but when. With the county, with fellow cities, with Judge Carter, who's working now in the city of LA and the county of LA, we're all running around looking at ways that we can do that as quickly as possible. And I want you to know that when the moment arrives that we see folks who are unhoused on the streets, we have to be prepared to respond quickly when they get COVID-19 to save their lives. We haven't been waiting. As I mentioned, we have over 310 sanitation stations for folks to wash their hands and sanitize their hands. We're putting out a record number of bathrooms, porta potties for folks to be able to use, continuing street sweeping along the areas where there's encampments for their public health. And we're focused on 3 things for all of us: increasing physical distancing, reducing the spread of the virus, and connecting those who are sick to the best medical resources that we have. So in the last few days, we activated 8 Rec and Park sites in Los Angeles City to bring vulnerable homeless Angelinos indoors and allow for safer physical distancing than was possible in existing shelters. Many of these new sites are already at capacity. In the days ahead, we hope to open more additional sites and move more people safely inside. And I'm grateful to our Rec and Parks team that got us to this point, heroic work that you have done, and the city disaster service workers and more than 400 volunteers that have stepped up to be trained to take on this effort. But we also know that we will need places for folks who are homeless to be isolated. So with the county, we're working to identify more than 600 hotel and motel rooms in the short term, and I hope thousands in the medium term, to be used as a quarantine or isolation unit for homeless Angelinos and low-income individuals who live in crowded environments where isolation might be hard to achieve. This will be critical to all of us in our fight to slow the spread of the coronavirus. We've taken steps to help the most vulnerable unhoused folks in Skid Row get access to key services and to testing. And I want to thank some partners who have done marvelous work: Los Angeles Christian Health Center, Star Clinic, and John Wesley Community Health Institute, who are providing testing right now. Our LAHSA and county outreach teams who are helping to identify people who might have symptoms, and our service housing and mission partners who have helped us locate spaces for shelter and emergency isolation. And I also want to recognize our friends at Urban Alchemy, Angelinos who were previously homeless themselves or incarcerated, who are continuing to serve this city. It's really heartwarming to see the path that they've taken in their own lives, and now they're out there on the streets working with folks that were just like they were, who today don't have a place to go, and helping those who are living on the streets stay safe and healthy. Public health guidance, I think we've all seen, is changing rapidly. So as we act decisively, we're keeping our operations as nimble as possible and adapting to the new guidelines that we receive from the Centers for Disease Control and our local health agencies. Finally, let me update you on our community institutions. Earlier today, families across Los Angeles learned that LAUSD schools will remain closed until at least May 1st. The district's decision came after consultation with county and state health officials. I know this is very hard on our students and families, on teachers and staff, but keeping schools closed is the most effective thing we can do to make sure LAUSD families are safe while this virus continues to spread. With the help of the Red Cross and other private partners, the district is serving 250,000 meals a day at 60 grab-and-go centers. Teachers are continuing to instruct in new and creative ways, and the district is providing employees the pay and benefits they and their families rely on. And Superintendent Buettner has also announced steps to keep students connected to their studies during this period, including a new partnership with Verizon that will bring internet access to students who don't have it at home. And you can find out more about that if you're a parent looking how your student can connect with them at achieve.lausd.net. My friends, throughout this crisis, I have assured you that key government operations will continue, and they will. Your water has kept flowing, the streets are being cleaned, public safety personnel remain at your service. But each of our agencies is making critical changes to their operations to keep you and our government employees safe and healthy. While our city is staying home, public transit continues to operate so that critical workers and first responders can get to their places of work to serve us, so that you can get essential items at the stores and our city can continue to function. But starting today, to protect Metro bus operators and keep everyone safe, all Metro bus riders will be asked to board and exit only through the rear door of buses. The front door will be used only for riders with accessibility needs when they can only board through that. Otherwise, please jump on the bus through the back door. All riders need to continue practicing a safe physical distance, spread out, stay 6 feet apart, and with so many people staying at home, that shouldn't be a difficult task. We want folks to stay home. We need folks to stay home. That's why today I'm enacting an emergency order allowing restaurants and bars that serve food to deliver alcoholic beverages in the city of Los Angeles. Our restaurants depend so often on those sales that have dried up, quite literally, that this will not only be something nice for the people of LA, but good for those businesses to keep them alive so that when this crisis is over, your favorite neighborhood watering hole and restaurant will still, we hope, be there. I will continue doing everything in my local power to support local businesses and to make sure that Angelinos stay at home. And this order advances both of those critical goals. I've also enacted an emergency order relaxing parking restrictions for commercial vehicles around industrial manufacturing commercial zones, because we have to support and help employees and employers that are doing the essential work that we are permitting to stay open. As long as this emergency period of safer at home continues, the city will not shut off water or power to the residents of Los Angeles. If you are able to pay your utility bill, just like your rent, you should. But our first concern is to make sure that all Angelinos have the essentials they need to get through this crisis. In fact, we reestablished service for folks that were just cut off in the weeks before this crisis to make sure while they're at home, they don't go without water and they don't go without power. In the coming days, I will continue to review all aspects of city operations and look at obstacles that are getting in the way of our response to this health crisis. In our city, our county, and our state, we're drawing strength from the unity that I know each one of us feel. And we expect the same from Washington, D.C. Yes, we need to protect vital industries and ensure that they are there tomorrow. But we also need to protect the workers that are those vital industries and that serve those industries. So as we look at help for airlines, which we need to do, we need to think about airline workers and those who work at the airport supporting them. This is not a time for partisan bickering. It is time for Washington to get a deal done. It's not an either or, it's a yes and. All of us agree that folks at the bottom shouldn't be cut off. Some proposals would have the very poorest not receiving cash aid. We can all agree that's ridiculous. But we have to also make sure that each one of us can make sure those strong parts of our economy can survive, and all of us can make sure the workers survive too. A few last words. Los Angeles is here to help. and I am here to help. Your city council members, your local electeds are focused every single day, working so hard to make sure that basic city government keeps functioning while basic city government steps up to the challenge of everything from hospital beds and testing to making sure we don't spread this virus anymore. So let me close as I began, with gratitude to all of you and to the communities that are serving us. Yesterday, I announced that we are working to raise $25 million to assist those most in need, families and individuals that need cash assistance, those healthcare workers that need to make sure their kids have childcare, and ensuring that our seniors have meals. And thank you to so many of you who have already stepped up and donated. It's a moment of extreme financial hardship for so many, and I'm grateful to every single person and entity that's donated to our Emergency Crisis Response Fund. Tonight, I'm extending that call to every Angelino who can just chip in a little bit with a separate initiative of the Mayor's Fund called the Angelino Campaign. It seeks to raise $10 million to provide cash assistance specifically for LA families most in need of income during this pandemic, a priceless lifeline that's made possible by no-fee debit cards enabled by MasterCard's City Possible network. And thank you, MasterCard, for when we reached out, stepping up to help. Up to 20,000 Angelinos are targeted for assistance by this campaign, which was seeded by a major contribution from native Angelino and extraordinary talent, NBA favorite Russell Westbrook, who just posted a video about this campaign on his social media channels. And trust me, those are much more exciting than the mayor, so check them out. It's essential that we keep as many families as possible out of crisis during this time. Neighbors helping neighbors can make a huge difference, and that's what the Angelino Campaign is all about. I want to thank again Matt Johnson, who I mentioned a few nights ago, who I tapped to lead the philanthropic response to this crisis, and the Mayor's Fund for Los Angeles and its board chair, Kathleen Brown, and Accelerator for America for swiftly standing up to this important campaign. To donate, it's really easy, and you don't have to leave the house. Just text LA Love to 21,000. That's 21000. Put in LA Love, or if you want to, you can go online to mayorsfundla.org/Angelino. You see, Angelinos don't run from challenges. We run to them. Just ask the folks over at Anheuser-Busch, right here in Los Angeles County, who are gearing up to make hand sanitizer that will be distributed across the country, as well as to folks that are in need. You see, we know there is no protective force field around us. Coronavirus simply can't be wished away. We have to work it away, each one of us, by staying home and those critical workers doing what we need. It will go away because of our actions, but it will also go away because of our hearts. When we make sure that it isn't just a virus we are defeating, but the isolation and poverty that will be exacerbated by the crisis. We have the power to solve those two things together. So we know what's expected of us, and I'll end as I always do. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay home. God bless you, Los Angeles, and God keep us. With that, I will take questions, and then I will, as usual, also give those remarks in Spanish. I'll take the first question.
Our first question is from Steve Gregory of KFI. We're hearing some law enforcement agencies are reviewing their protocols to handle mass quarantine, curfews, and crowd control. What have you been told by LAPD and the LAFD about the state of readiness in LA in the event any or all of these events will happen? And will the California National Guard ever play a role? Also, the president has signed an executive order to prohibit hoarding. Are you considering a similar order?
So far, no. We have used public education on the hoarding front, and besides the disappeared toilet paper that is little by little coming back, and we do expect that to be fully restocked in the next week. We haven't had the need to impose that, though we did consider an anti-hoarding order. So far, so good. In terms of the National Guard has been deployed by our governor, and thank you, Governor Newsom, for that. Right now, working in our food banks and others. They're always there, and we think of them in this city often about restoring social order, but that's not the problem of this crisis. This is a public health emergency. This isn't a public safety emergency. This isn't one in which we've seen people be more violent. As I said, crime is down and generosity is up. So we welcome, and we have, and I've talked to the governor, that we would be more than pleased to accept any National Guard units, especially those who have medical capacities, to supplement our capacity to respond. Just as yesterday we celebrated that the United States naval ship Mercy would be in the port of Los Angeles later this week. That will help us free up patients that are in our hospitals who don't have COVID-19, so those beds are available for them as well. In terms of the Los Angeles Fire Department, they're not obviously involved in things like crowd control or public safety issues. They are there to respond to fires and to, of course, medical emergencies. But LAPD, of course, is always trained, goes over that in any emergency. But I want to be clear, they're not getting ready for that to happen. People are not hitting the streets in numbers that we have to be worried about. There is not unrest. There is more social order. There is less crime. And there is more cooperation with us every single day. That said, I have asked Chief Moore that police who are patrolling should be the eyes and ears of these orders, should pull over and tell people when they're not physical distancing, when they see people in violation of these orders, they are able to do that. And we will announce more about that enforcement tomorrow, not necessarily from LAPD, but with other city workers who will make sure that when we get, and we appreciate the calls that have come in, somebody saying, hey, there was an illegal gathering, or somebody's throwing a party, or there's a bar that thinks it could open up, or whatever it is, we've been able to respond to those quickly, and we want to continue to make sure that we're making this as airtight as possible. But my last answer to that is, remember, as great work as our public officials and public servants who are in the police department can do, National Guardsmen and women can do as well, this is really still on us. Be that law, be that order. Go to someone yourself and say, hey, you guys are all standing so close. Know that that can kill somebody, even one of you, because of this virus. And people 9 out of 10 times will respond and do that. And in the 1 out of 10 times, we'll be there to back you up. Next question.
The next question is from Claudia Pesquiuta of KNX.
Hi, Claudia.
Is the city going to do anything to incentivize manufacturers to switch their probation lines to make masks, swabs, and other supplies needed right now?
Absolutely. Thank you, Claudia, for the question. As I mentioned last night and gave an email for the mayor's help desk, we have gotten literally hundreds of offers, and we're coordinating out of our business operations center, at our emergency operations center, all of the amazing companies, whether they're apparel manufacturers who are already getting ready and starting to do mask manufacturing, personal protective equipment manufacturing, hospital gown manufacturing, all of that which Los Angeles really can do, not just for ourselves, but hopefully for the nation in the midst of this. We've got sewing machines, we've got sewers, we've got people out of work, we've got capacity. So that absolutely is essential work, and we are coordinating that, and some of those production lines will already start up. I'll be speaking more to folks tomorrow about masks in general, and we're working with UCLA and County Public Health to assess the different materials and different gradations of masks. And certainly we've seen in countries that have that on the general public that that can be helpful in slowing the spread. So it's a little preview of coming attractions tomorrow. Obviously, other other industries that we have are also focused on this. Equipment manufacturers to look at everything from IV poles to 3D printing communities, looking at the things that we need for our medical equipment. We need more respirators, ventilators. Those take some time, and I know that we're looking at a number of companies here and business leaders here who have some capacity to do that. Elon Musk is one of them. The governor talked about car manufacturers have some similar types, but that does still take weeks, if not months, to change those assembly lines. So in the meantime, we're looking at what we have the capacity to do right now and procuring masks, equipment, and everything from around the world and around the country as we speak from our Emergency Operations Center. More on that tomorrow. Next question.
The next question is from Coco McAboy of Fox 11.
Hi, Coco.
What are the requirements for COVID-19 testing? We spoke with a woman today who says her father's 65 years old with breathing problems, a heart condition, and is showing symptoms. The family claims he was denied a test this weekend at a local hospital, but was told he likely has coronavirus from a doctor.
Right.
What is the bar for someone to receive a test?
So it sounds like he would probably pretty favorably go through our portal. So go to coronavirus.lacity.org with him and make sure he answers that questions or do it for him. And then you'll get an appointment at the end if you're at the level that right now tests can be used. That was one of the frustrations. I had stories like that. Again, this isn't for widespread testing. It isn't for people who don't have symptoms. It isn't for folks who have mild symptoms. But those that are vulnerable, like the woman's father that you mentioned, who are in the age group, who also seem to have the symptoms and their onset and or pre-existing medical conditions, should be able to get a test. And certainly by the end of the week, we'll have that capacity be up much more than about 1,000 a day tests that we have right now. Thanks for the question.
Next question is from Veronica Miracle from KABC. Hi, Mayor Garcetti.
Hi, Veronica.
With Senate Democrats and Republicans unable to agree on an economic stimulus package, millions of Angelinos are left struggling without the financial aid they need now. If our elected officials in Washington are unable to come to an agreement soon, do you plan on taking further steps than you already have to help local citizens?
Yeah.
If so, what are those steps?
So the Angelino Fund is the one. That's the texting 21000 LA Love to 21000. And we're also looking at, it's difficult to use government money, local government money, on some of those programs, but we're looking to see whether that can be done too. We're able to do that for small businesses. We're trying to raise $10 million, so we hope folks will give. I'm certainly making calls to a lot of the folks that run companies, people of high net worth, others who have stepped up to be amazing pillars of our city, and saying, we need you now. So those calls are going on each and every day, and we hope to be able to roll those sorts of funds. But the question gets to a good point. Washington, do your job, get it done, stop the bickering. Each side is blaming each other. If Republicans in the Senate would just acknowledge some of the things that Democrats are saying, if we could get Democrats to acknowledge that the Republicans want to do a few things, this could get done tonight. And I think I said a week ago, I couldn't believe that the Senate wasn't even meeting. Last Saturday and Sunday and Monday. What could possibly be more urgent for the people of America than right now getting into our bank accounts for the most vulnerable cash assistance that they need to be able to survive these days, be able to pay for food while they are at home? Let's get it so that we don't have to get to the second part of your question and figure out how we're going to pick up those pieces. Next question.
The next question is from Ben Oreskes from the LA Times. The latest guidance from the CDC states that municipalities, quote, unless individual housing units are available, unquote, shouldn't, quote, clear encampments during the community spread of COVID-19, unquote, for fear of causing people to disperse and spread the disease. Do you feel like this guidance contradicts the city's plan to allow people to stay in recreation centers? Has your view that this is the best possible solution shifted since this guidance was announced? Can you say what the city plans to do with the motels and hotels? Wouldn't it be a helpful lifeline for this ailing industry?
Absolutely. Let me start with the hotels and motels. I've said from the beginning, and that's being done through the state and county together, but hopefully we can get as many of those through the county and the state emergency aid that's been given specifically to help homeless Californians during this crisis. As I mentioned, there's about 600 that we've asked for right now. We need that to be in the thousands soon, and I'm happy for each one of those to essentially swap out a shelter bed. If we could do all 6,000 that we plan to do right there, and knowing that people can come in and out of there because some people may be sick, mild symptoms, a couple weeks, that bed can then be opened up. But we also need the staffing from all of us collectively. The city will look to how it can do that, but it's a public health directive. We hope that the county, LASA, or the state can help us get personnel, because you can't just put somebody in a hotel room. You have to be able to monitor them and make sure that essentially you can check on their temperature, or if they're symptomatic, you can check on their health. In terms of the guidance, it is unclear and it's evolving. That's why I said before. When we've checked in and I've talked with Robert Marbut, who is the interagency head for the White House on homelessness, that guidance is not so much don't go into shelters at all. There's actually guidance for how shelter should be, and that's why in each of our rec centers we're not able to put as many people in, and that's good guidance. So the density of those has gone down, the spacing up, and it's safe. They're talking about cities who might say clear out encampments without a place for them to go, is what he and other federal officials that we've talked to are giving us with guidance. So they're not saying don't use shelters. They're saying use shelters with these guidelines, but don't clear people out, because doing that could actually spread things if you're not having a place for them to go. That said, on the streets, we do want to look at, and working with LAHSA, we'd like them to help us make sure people have distance, physical distance between each other. If they're staying on the street and they're intense, they need to make sure that they have the same space that we're talking about. And it should probably be more than 6 feet wherever possible, given that folks are sleeping there and that they need to make sure that this COVID-19 does not spread. Thank you. Next question.
Francine Kiefer from the Christian Science Monitor asks, could you give us an update on how the effort to stand up 6,000 shelter beds for the homeless is going? How do you think the surge in shelter beds and other resources for the homeless could positively influence homelessness beyond the COVID crisis?
Well, thank you for the question, because it is my hope that whatever help we get from the state and the county, I've always said that homelessness is a solvable problem. We have the solutions. We actually know what works. We've doubled in the last few years the number of people we're helping off the street every single day. We just haven't had enough resources. So now, possibly, with the resources that are being given to us from the state, the possibility that because this is a public health emergency, FEMA should reimburse us for making sure the threat is taken off the street. We need to think not just about the crisis of today, but the ongoing crisis before and after of housing and homelessness. So we need to have good exits out of those motel rooms, out of those shelters, into housing wherever possible. Now, the good news is this year we have 1,000+ units of new housing for some of the hardest to reach folks on the street available. We've got another, got to do the quick calculation, I think 1,500 beds worth of transitional bridge housing shelter that people can move into afterwards, with case management where they can stay and keep their possessions, their pets, bring their partners, get health care and other things. So we really want the state, federal government, and county to be working with us to think about the exits. And the county's been a marvelous partner on this. We know that how thinly stretched they are. But to the first part of your question, how it's going, it's tough. We've never moved this many people ever, or had the ambition to move this many people off the streets at any given time. As I said a few days back, I think, we were proud that in 18 months, we were building 2,200 beds worth. That was something that hasn't been done in this country in a long time. Not any other big city in America building that much new shelter. This was one where we were trying to get as many as 6,000 people into new beds just in a matter of weeks. So that is still absolutely the goal. Because the direction is coming from the county and the state, my message loud and clear in talking to other mayors is we can't do this alone. I know you might not be able to give us health personnel because they're stretched thin, but we do need the funding, and we do need folks who can. The city doesn't have doctors and nurses. We need people who can check in on the folks who are being isolated because they're at risk or who have become symptomatic. And then in the tail end of this, when this winds down, we hope to ramp up and surge up some of the case management to have more solutions. And it's certainly something we're thinking about now, that in the coming months, when this crisis is over, what can we do with landlords and others? What can we do with the new openings of permanent housing to get the homeless not just out of this crisis, but off the streets?
The next question is from Esmeralda Cisneros of Telemundo. We have received numerous calls from viewers that claim non-essential businesses remain open. Viewers say some business owners are forcing their employees to work in close spaces and are asking them to work even though they have a job that is non-essential. What message do you have for those businesses? What types of measures is the city taking to stop these businesses from operating? Where can employees call to report this non-compliance?
Thank you. My message is shut it down or we will shut you down. I want to be crystal clear about this. You are endangering not just the lives of your employees, but your life as well. If we don't knock this curve down, this is coming for you too. And if we don't treat it with that sort of seriousness, there are no exceptions to the exceptions. We spelled out what can be done and what can't be done. And what can't be done cannot be done. So for employees that would like to report that, 311, and we know there are some long waits right now and we're trying to ramp that up, is a number that you can call, or the mayor's help desk, which you can find at coronavirus.lacity.org. Also, we hope to have ambassadors out there, city employees that are out there on the streets, along with our police officers, looking for these places and these spaces. So you're not on your own. We'll be proactively looking to help you, but please do let us know, and we'll make sure that we roll someone out and ensure that if it is a critical business, that you are properly spaced, and if it's not a critical business, that it is not open. Thank you.
Next question's from Mary Beth McDade from KTLA 5 News. We've been hearing a lot about the number of cases, but we haven't been hearing how many people have recovered from the virus. Where do things stand with recoveries?
So recoveries are pretty consistent in terms of percentages. Obviously, we're now at the beginning of the time when a lot of people who first contracted COVID-19 will be recovering. I guess the most brutal measure of that is those that have died, and our heart breaks for families, by the way, tonight, of the 7 individuals in LA County that have already lost their lives. We know that life will never feel the same for you, and we mourn alongside you. And we know there's other families that have people in critical care right now, in intensive care units, and those who are hanging on. But for the great majority, about 80% or so, folks will neither be in critical care and will not die. And we're seeing those numbers be consistent here in Los Angeles as well. Today was a big jump comparatively of cases. We had a number of days over the weekend when the number was increasing by the same, but the percentage was actually going down. We were not seeing exponential growth. Today it went back to about a 31% jump. But remember, a lot of that too is that we have more tests. So these numbers don't reflect necessarily how many people have this. It reflects how many we've tested and have reported back either positive or negative. So one of the things we're going to work on, and I spoke with the governor yesterday, there was one small case study that was done here, one in Orange County and one up in Contra Costa County, in Santa Clara County, where a random sample was tested. Here in Los Angeles County, it was about 8% of people had it, but I think it was a very small sample. So for those listening, it might have just been 1 or 2 people, so that number could be off significantly. But even if we should assume that we know that there are many more cases than we are testing for, in the single digits, hopefully here still, of the population, already counties are seeing that in the low double digits in other places, and we need more of that testing, not just of people who have symptoms, but a random sampling so that we can really get a sense day to day, not just how many tests come back positive, but how many people are walking around with this, and we can enact the measures necessary. But I, as mayor of the city of Los Angeles, have assumed it's much worse from the beginning. That's why we did the closures when we did them. That's why we went to safer at home when we did. It's why we continue to tighten that, both in the enforcement and the applicability, while we try to lessen the blow for as many people as possible. Thank you.
Next question's from Dakota Smith of the LA Times. Tonight you announced that LA restaurants could deliver alcoholic drinks. How is what you announced different from what the State Alcoholic Beverage Control announced several days ago when they said restaurants can deliver alcohol?
That was guidance. This is an order. So this ensures that that is possible here. Some of the state stuff has been guidance and some of it has been an order. But for us, we wanted to ensure that people knew that they could and make it the law here. Next question.
Next question's from Alex Michelson of Fox 11 News.
Hey, Alex.
President Trump says businesses will reopen soon and much faster than people think. What's your reaction to this comment? Based on seeing the models you do, what's the realistic timing that Angelinos can expect to see?
I don't think that businesses will open quickly. And I think that that's just straight talk. Looking at the depth of this and looking at every country that has confronted this in a massive way. Those that are unsuccessful and those that are successful have not been able to see a quick comeback. I will give one kind of ray of light amongst the dark clouds that are still overhead, though. Looking at history, the recovery out of these pandemics is often faster than people think. And often things like the stock market overreacts to the level of the crisis, thinking that it will be a longer and tougher recovery. But a lot of that will depend on what Washington does. To bridge people over these next 2 or 3 months, to bridge people the next time there's a spike, as there well may be in the fall or early winter if we're successful in flattening the curve now. That means many people, thankfully, won't have it, but it means that they could have it until a vaccine is available. So I'm hopeful that our economy, when we emerge through this, whether it's a year or a year and a half from now, and I don't mean that we'll be at home that entire time, but when we get through a point when we finally build up the immunities and or have the vaccine, that we will have an economy as strong as it was before this happened. But that will depend on making sure the most vulnerable are not forgotten, that our immigrants are not forgotten in this, that are so vital to Los Angeles and America's existence, and that we keep as many people on their feet as possible, surviving while this goes along.
Our last question comes from Laura Nelson of the LA Times.
Hey, Laura.
How should riders pay their fares on metro buses if they are boarding through the back doors? The fare box is right next to the operator.
Sure. They are still able to go up there and pay the fares. We don't want people queuing. We know the back doors are a quick way to get in and out, so you're still able to do that and encouraged to. Next question?
That was our last question.
That was our last one. Thank you to all the members of the press, by the way, who have been covering this. I'm sorry I don't get to see you in here, but I hope that keeps you and me and all of us safer and demonstrates our safe physical distancing. And I'm going to say a few words in Spanish as well, and then I'll say goodbye to everybody in English. But thank you, everybody who tuned in, who will be tuning out. Stay strong, be safe.